Okay, let's do a Patient of the Week video here on a transmission that came through for rebuild, just to give you a feel for some of the things we can see. This gearbox had two primary complaints. One was something very definitely wrong with fifth gear and an intermittent lockout in second gear. So what you're looking at here is the fifth gear synchro. As you can see, it's cracked in two places. The chips were interestingly trapped inside the hub behind the synchro spring. So that answers the primary issue of fifth gear not working. Also related to fifth gear, this gearbox had a very interesting fifth reverse shift rod. So the shift rod has had a bead of weld run through the detent slot, one of the detent slots. That would be the neutral slot for fifth and reverse gear. And on the other side there's also a bead of weld. Now a unmodified shift rod would look something like this. So the other thing that appears to have been done is the spring has been relaxed. The upper few coils have been compressed somehow to take maybe about a ½ inch of preload out of this spring. I think the rebuilder was probably trying to address the reverse synchro melting problem that these gearboxes have, where the reverse synchro is constantly in contact with the reverse gear. There's another video on here that I posted that talks about that. But in fact, in this gearbox, the reverse synchro was still melted. So I applaud the cleverness of the modifications, but it at least was not entirely successful in this gearbox. Possibly explaining the second gear issue, I found what appears to be a front bearing shim that might have been a spare out of another transmission. This was wrapped around the main shaft near the second gear, and that could be what was causing the intermittent second gear lockout. I didn't find any other issues to explain why second gear would have been intermittent in this gearbox. The third and fourth gear synchro rings have the characteristic denting on either side of the synchro key relief area. We have another video on here that talks about that, tries to demonstrate that that does come from the synchro spring locating tangs. The synchro springs themselves in this gearbox were very interesting. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but all 6 springs in this gearbox have been polished and ground. Probably in an attempt to minimize the stress risers, just like you would grind and polish an engine part to try to take away as much of the stress risers as you can. So all 6 springs were modified in that way. We had significant shift fork wear in this gearbox. This is the 3/4 shift fork. The wear pads are completely gone, and so you have a full circumference of wear. A new fork would look like this. So this is a very extreme amount of wear in these 3/4 forks. Been talking to some other people about the idea that redline MTL may not be a great fluid for these gearboxes. There seems to be some correlation between this extreme fork wear and people using redline fluids. And those were most of the notable issues with this transmission. We will of course replace any of the other normal wear items, and that's it.